Hi, and welcome to the introductory presentation on SAP Business Application Studio. My name is Raz Korn. I'm Product Manager for SAP Business Application Studio and SAP Web IDE. In this session, I'll start with an introduction to SAP Business Application Studio. Then I'll give a demo of how to develop using App Studio. I'll provide high-level comparison with SAP Web IDE, roadmap, how to get started, and a recap of the session. I'll start with an overview of App Studio. SAP Business Application Studio is pretty much the next generation of SAP Web IDE, or if you'd like, its evolution. It is generally available on SAP's multi-cloud environment, AWS, Azure, and Ali Cloud, and also available on SAP Cloud Platform trial environment for test and evaluation. It's a modern development environment tailored for efficient development of business applications for the intelligent enterprise. Applications such as SAP Fiori, SAP S/4HANA extensions, modeling workflows, and mobile applications, to name a few. The main motivation for developing it is to provide better development experience to address the needs of application development with desktop-like experience in the cloud. We also wanted to provide a consistent experience with leading IDEs. It embraces the experience of Microsoft Visual Studio Code, making the developer productive as soon as the App Studio is used. It is achieved through the underlying technology that makes it easy to use extensions from the market. This allowed us, for example, to provide better support for developing in Java, Node, and include command line interface or terminal. An additional motivation was to provide a development environment that can be made available from various hyperscalers in various regions, which is well aligned with SAP's multi-cloud strategy. App Studio provides turnkey solutions based on what we call dev spaces. Dev spaces are like isolated virtual machines in the cloud that can be instantly spinned up, where you can efficiently develop, test, build, and run the solution. Each dev space type contains tailored tools and pre-installed runtimes for a target scenario such as SAP Fiori or mobile development. This simplifies and saves time in setting up the development environment, as there's no need to install anything or upgrade, letting developers focus on their business domain anytime, anywhere. Integration with additional services and solutions, on-premise or in the cloud, or leveraging SAP technologies is a breeze. Examples can be SAP API Business Hub and SAP solutions for data consumption and application deployment, SAP technologies such as SAP UI5, SAP Cloud Application Programming Model, and commonly used technologies such as Java, Node, and OData. And of course, App Studio comes with many high productivity tools that accelerate application development, such as templates, wizards, optimized code and graphical editors, deployment tools, and more. I would like to show you the big picture of the product. I'll start with the developer. All the developer needs is a machine running a browser and connected to the internet, as the App Studio is a browser-based access. In the center of the diagram, you can see the App Studio with available dev spaces of various types. In our example, you can see a dev space for SAP Fiori development. The dev space includes a file system where the code is stored that we recommend as best practice to connect to a Git source code repository, a development environment which is an IDE based on an open source. The dev space includes all tools required for the specific scenario as pre-packaged extensions. If additional tools are needed, there's the option to customize the dev space and add additional extensions. The App Studio can connect to various data sources, either on-premise or in the cloud, SAP and non-SAP. When the development is done, the app can be tested locally in the dev space for fast dev test cycles, and it can be easily prepackaged and deployed to the target runtime for testing in the actual runtime environment. Dev spaces are at the heart of SAP Business Application Studio. Let's take a closer look at this concept. Here you can see additional example of dev space types according to applications you'd like to develop, SAP Fiori, full stack application based on SAP Cloud Application Programming Model, and mobile dev space as an example. Each of these dev spaces come prepackaged with the tools and runtimes relevant for each scenario. Some of them are shared across scenarios and some are unique per scenario. If we take, for example, the SAP Fiori dev space, it has the SAP Fiori tools for SAP Fiori Elements development and SAP Fiori apps extensions, templates for various application types, local SAP UI5 for testing, mock server, high productivity graphical editors, and many more. Now, after this introduction to App Studio, let's see SAP Business Application Studio in action. In this demo, I'll develop a very basic SAP Fiori app to demonstrate the capabilities of SAP Business Application Studio. I'll start off from the SAP Cloud Platform page on sap.com and log into my trial account where I'll be able to find SAP Business Application Studio. So within my trial environment, I'll launch the SAP Cloud Platform cockpit, and this will load my global account, trial global account page, and the Business Application Studio is available as a subscription within a sub account. So here I have the trial sub account, which I'm launching, and then I'll go to my subscription tab where I'll be able to see many services that are available as part of my trial account. Business Application Studio is one of these subscriptions. In order to have it operational and ready for development, I need to perform some administration tasks, which are not part of this demo, and you can find the details in a tutorial in developerssap.com. As well as within the guides of the Business Application Studio. So once I have a subscription to the Business Application Studio, I can go to Application and launch the Business Application Studio. First off, I'll confirm or agree to the legal terms, and then I'll get the Dev Space Manager. When I first get to the Dev Space Manager, no dev spaces are available. And the first thing that I need to do is to create a dev space. Various dev space types are currently available. The list is growing. And you can see that for each dev space type, there's a different set of extensions that are available. Additional capabilities of the Dev Space Manager are, of course, to start or stop the dev space, download its content, delete it. We'll do our development work in the Fiori demo dev space, which is based on an SAP Fiori dev space type. I'm launching it by clicking it, so the development environment will load. The application that I'm going to develop is very simple. It will present me a list of suppliers from my backend. And that's how this Application Studio development environment looks like. Very similar to VS Code experience. Of course, the standard menu at the top, various panes that I need as part of my development work. At the bottom, we have the status bar that provides me a lot of information. For example, if I'm connected to Cloud Foundry, organization and space, any problems within my development project, notifications that I get as part of my work from the development environment, and also the background color of the status bar conveys a message. And here, for example, it's a kind of magenta, which means that no workspace is open, and we'll get to that in a moment. And of course, the middle section, major real estate of the product, is dedicated for the development work. I'll start my development by launching a wizard, a kind of a form wizard to create my project. I'll use an SAP Fiori Freestyle project generator. can develop for the Cloud Foundry environment or for the ABAP environment. We select the Cloud Foundry environment. I can see that I have various templates available for me. I'll use the basic SAP UI5 application template. I'll give it a project name, Fiori demo-ras. And you can see, by the way, that as part of the wizard, I can go back or click a specific step in the wizard and go back to that stage and move from that point on. I'll use a lot of defaults that are in order to make things a bit less complicated. Our tab will show suppliers, our application will show suppliers. I'll connect to a backend system. There are various types of systems that I can connect to an ABAP cloud, for example, SAP Business Hub. I'm going to connect to a SAP backend system. The list of options that will be available for me are a list of destinations that are defined in my sub account and relevant for this type of system. And I'm going to use ES5, which is SAP's public gateway that anyone can register to. And now I need to select the service that I'm going to consume in my application. I can scroll down the list and look for the right one, or I can just filter the list. I'm going to use GW sample basic service for my application. Basically, I completed the wizard part of the development. I can start the application generation also from CLI. I can clone application from Git. I have full Git pane for working with Git, and I can also drag and drop application from my local machine. If you recall, I talked about the workspaces earlier. So in order to continue with my development, I need to open a workspace. I can open a workspace that contains all my projects, some of my projects, or a single project, and I'm going to open a workspace that contains only the project that we're currently working on, and you will be able to see that I get a visual indication of the status bar. Its background color will change from magenta to blue, which means that I have an open workspace and I can continue with my development. What you can see here, you can see a standard SAP Fiori application project structure with the controller for logic, local service, which is the backend service information, and the view. We're going to do some development on the view. So I'm going to open it with the layout editor. Those of you who are familiar with SAP Web IDE will feel right at home. It's exactly the same layout editor. And in parallel to the layout editor, I'm going to open it also in my code editor, just to show how they interact, the code view and the graphical view. So as we said, we're going to have a list as part of the project, list of suppliers. And you can see here that the list was added also to the code. And I'm going to bind the list to the business partners entity set. And again, you'll see it here also in the code. And this allows me now to bind the fields in the list to properties that are coming from the backend service. And you can see that as I add the fields, as I add the properties, the code changes. So here a company name, business partner ID. And basically, I completed my development work, and I would like to do a very fast test cycle without deploying to the cloud, as deploying to the cloud takes relatively long time. So I'm going to create a run configuration. I can create multiple run configurations for each application. Each run configuration can be use either the backend data itself or use testing frameworks or mock service with various types of UI5 versions. And of course, I can set the name of the run configuration, as I can have multiple run configuration and like to distinguish between them. Expanding the run configuration, I see the resources that I need to configure as part of the run configuration. In this case, only the destination. So I click on the bind. It will launch the command palette. Command palette is like a mini wizard that guides me through the steps of a specific command. And here it's the command that links, that binds the data source for the specific configuration. I'm going to use ES5, of course, and I get a visual indication that the binding was successful. Now I can run my application, and for testing, it will run within my dev space, so it's going to be very fast. So I'm clicking the run button, and you'll be able to see that I'm going into debug mode. Again, the status bar color changes to a sort of orange, which means that I'm in a debug session, and I can open my running application. To see it, I can see that it brings data from the backend. And yes, my application is running well, and I'm kind of happy with it. So, but let's say that I want to now to run the application again. Should I just stop and run and go through all this, go through some kind of trouble in a way? No, I can go to my command palette. Command palette allows me to run commands. It's like a mini wizard. And in order to run again the application, I have the ports command. I have various ports command, so I can expose ports, rename, unexpose. This time I want to preview. This port, I expose it as part of the debug, so I'm going to expose it again. And now I can run the application again. Okay, let's go back to my development environment. So basically, I feel kind of happy with my application and like to deploy it to my runtime environment. So what I need to do is, of course, go through a build and deploy process. Okay, so I'll open a terminal, and you can see here that I have full access for the terminal. Now we're going to do just a build command. So it's npt build for the Cloud Foundry environment. The build process is relatively fast, and this is why I'm showing it as part of the demo. The deployment takes a few minutes, and we'll skip the deployment phase. You can see as part of the build, I'm going to get my dist folder with the distribution, as well as the MTA archives, which is what I use to deploy to the CF environment. So we have here the dist folder, and we have the MTA archives. And in order to deploy the MTA archive, what I need to do is to right-click and deploy. But before I can do it, I need to connect to a Cloud Foundry space. I can do it in two ways. I can either go through the command palette and look for the relevant CF command, CF login to Cloud Foundry, and very easily I can get step-by-step guidance to connect to the space where I want to deploy my application. I'm going to deploy it to the wing testing space. So we can see here that I've been logged in, the organization and space have been set. And I can also see it here at the bottom left that I'm connected to the Cloud Foundry environment. As I mentioned, the deployment step takes quite some time, so I've already deployed it in advance. You can see that my application was deployed to the Wing testing space, and I'm going to launch it directly from my Cloud Foundry space on SAP Cloud Platform. So it is using the app router technology which serves static content. So I'm going to launch the app router, but of course I need to tell the app router which application, which static content I want it to serve. So I'm adding, telling the app router to bring me the business partner, the index.html, and I'm launching the application. The app router fetches the right content, connecting to the backend, and brings the data to me. So now let's get back to our presentation. Since many of you are probably aware and use SAP Web IDE, I'd like to share a high-level comparison between App Studio and SAP Web IDE. First thing is kind of obvious. App Studio is available as a new service in the Cloud Foundry environment, while the SAP Web IDE is available on the Neo environment. From deployment target perspective, both on-premise ABAP and Cloud Foundry are available for both. But while we do not have plans for App Studio to support Neo, we plan for it to support the ABAP environment, also known as ABAP Cloud System. This means that for App Studio, the three main deployment scenarios supported are on-premise ABAP, SAP Cloud Platform Cloud Foundry environment, and SAP Cloud Platform ABAP environment. This is a good time to mention that customers and partners who would like to develop applications for the Neo environment should use SAP Web IDE. From a solution perspective, SAP Web IDE supports generic workspaces where the developer needs to customize to the specific development scenario, while the App Studio core capability is to create dev spaces that include all tools and runtimes for efficient development of a target scenario with a lot more control over the environment and code. From an experience perspective, App Studio embraces Microsoft Visual Studio Code experience. It has the tools professional developers like, for example, Terminal, but also high productivity tools that lower the barrier for junior developer or enable professional developers to quickly create proof of concept. In the future, we plan to offer the option to add additional extensions from a marketplace to further enhance the development experience. The desktop-like experience means that the developed application can be tested locally in the dev space. This saves a lot of time in the dev test cycle as there's no need to redeploy the application for testing. From a persona perspective, App Studio was first designed to serve pro-coder developers for the cloud and full stack, comparing to SAP Web IDE that provides a similar experience to all personas. App Studio can support additional personas with suited dev spaces. Extending the environment, with SAP Web IDE, it is a proprietary extension framework and could not leverage the extensions that are available in the market, while with App Studio, the extension framework is compatible with VS Code extensions and can use thousands of available extensions. We're already in Q3. In Q1, App Studio supported freestyle development of SAP Fiori apps and full stack applications leveraging SAP Cloud Application Programming Model. In Q2, we added additional development scenarios like SAP Workflow, SAP Fiori Elements, extension of SAP Fiori apps, SAP Mobile, and more. Roadmap for Q3 and Q4 include application modeling using Storyboard for full stack app applications, guided development tool developing application with the help of interactive guides, where each guide helps with completing a development task, pointing to dedicated tools helping with the task's implementation, like snippet tool, command palette, and more. Deployment to ABAP environment and integration with SAP CI/CD service. In the future, we would like to offer Personal Edition to be installed on the developer's local machine, integration with extensions marketplace to enhance the development experience, and support for native SAP HANA development. You can get started with SAP App Studio on SAP Cloud Platform trial environment to try and evaluate. We have a set of tutorials that will help you get started. Customers can purchase it for productive use either in subscription model or consumption model. Partners can purchase it as an add-on to their SAP Cloud Platform Cloud Foundry development instance. If you're looking to find additional information on App Studio or stay up to date, you can visit App Studio's homepage on www.sap.com/appstudio. One last point I would like to mention before I wrap up is that as a cloud product, we frequently introduce innovation to App Studio. Therefore, when getting your hands dirty with App Studio, it might look different than what you just saw in the demo. So today we talked about SAP Business Application Studio, the development environment from SAP that provides a modern, desktop-like experience in the cloud for efficient development of business applications for the intelligent enterprise. SAP App Studio is generally available on AWS, Azure, and Ali Cloud, and you can try it out on SAP Cloud Platform Trial. Thank you for joining this session. I'm wishing you productive and fun use of SAP Business Application Studio. Have a great rest of the day. Goodbye.